Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight to our virtual meet and greet with the finalists with the Silverfall School District for the superintendent position. As you can see tonight, we are doing this via Zoom in a webinar, and we very much appreciate your attendance tonight, as well as your patience with us as we navigate through our current situation of having to conduct this forum in a virtual setting. Each finalist will get approximately 25 minutes to introduce themselves and answer your questions. If you would like to submit a question for a candidate, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. The chat function and raising your hand have been disabled, but you will submit questions here through this question and answer, and I will see the questions and then use them as best I can. And this feature, your questions will be anonymous, as well as any that you have submitted to me in email in advance. So I will ask a broad range of questions, and I've already received a lot of questions that came in ahead of time, and we're going to work through those, and I will incorporate the questions that you send in via this Q&A feature as well. And since we are limited on time, we may not get to all questions. If I feel a question is inappropriate, I may not ask it, and if there are duplicates, I will move on to the next question. After each candidate's time slot, there will be 5 minutes of transition time, and that is a great opportunity to email me your feedback regarding the candidates. Your submissions, once again, will be kept anonymous, and the board will be hearing all of the feedback that I get from anyone, but in an anonymous fashion. And the board is very much looking forward to hearing your thoughts on these candidates. So our lineup this evening is Christopher Bond from Fort Sage Unified School District in California, Scott Drew of Beaverton School District, and Randy Traney of Kobit School District. Now tomorrow evening, the candidates are going to have their final interviews with the school board, after which the board will identify a top candidate and move on to contract negotiations. So we've got about 3 minutes before our first candidate is set to have his time. So get a little acquainted with the question and answer feature, get settled into your seats and whatnot. And once 6:05 hits, I will start us off with our first candidates. And again, thank you all so much for being with us tonight. It's really wonderful that we're able to still continue to introduce you to the finalists, even though we're unable to do so in person. So I will be with you all in about 1.5 minutes. All right, and we are back with our first candidate of the night, Christopher Bond. And Christopher, we can't see you. Can you turn your video on?
Can you hear me? It's saying that you have me blocked on the video on my end when I'm clicking it.
All right, we will take care of that. I can hear you, yes. So Drew, if you're out there somewhere, can you enable Christopher's video for me, please?
Control to attendee, forbid. Let's see, I think the only way to do that, Sarah, is going to make him host, which we can do, so.
Thanks, Drew. Again, audience, I'm so sorry for the technical difficulties, but there we go. Perfect. Thank you. Now we can see you. All right, so let's get started. Why don't you take a couple minutes, introduce yourself to the group, and share your leadership style or philosophy or whatever you would like to share with the group.
Well, thank you. I hope I didn't scare anybody away when the video went on. My name is Dr. Christopher Bond. I've been an educator now for 28 years. I started by working in my alma mater as a football coach after playing college football at Scottsdale College. From there, I was extended an opportunity to work in a classroom with severely emotional disabled students and students with autism. And at the time when I got into education, gifted and talented was considered a disability because many students had some behavioral issues and they didn't understand it was because they weren't being challenged. So I went in there as an emergency substitute and I found my love and my passion. From there, I worked for about 14 years in education at a high school. And then I was recruited after graduate school to go work at a middle school that was in a turnaround process. And then from there, I was asked to go over to a large high school that was struggling with violence and some other pretty serious situations. And then I was asked by the superintendent to go in and work in 2 schools in that district that were struggling academically and financially. From there, I moved and was recruited to go to a small rural school district to help them with their academic achievement and help them to excel a little bit better. And from that, I was recruited to come up here to Northern California, Fort Sage Unified School District, who was impacted greatly by the Brackett Commission and the downsizing of military installations. And basically the school was given to the community and the community didn't have a tax base or revenue to support it. So I'm up here right now working with them to help get them financially stable as well as help them academically. I also work for Grand Canyon University. I'm an adjunct professor in the College of Education in the areas of early childhood development, English language learners, leadership, and I also work as a doctoral instructor. And in my career, this is my 14th year in administration, I have mentored or had at least 50 mentees that are going into leadership at some capacity, either directors of special ed or curriculum and instruction, principals, assistant principals. So that's been my career. I'm an outdoor avid fisherman, fly fish. I shoot archery. I cook extensively. If you look at me, you can tell I love to eat. But I just enjoy life, and it has been my lifelong dream to move to Oregon. I've been going up there since I was 14 years old, twice a year to go fishing. I have a friend that lives in Goshen, Oregon. He's a firefighter, and we've been connecting since I was 14 years old. So I know the area, and it's been my lifelong dream to be able to locate up there and be with my family and friends up there.
Great, thank you. All right, we're going to jump right in. How would you implement bringing back elementary music education to all of our schools?
Well, I can tell you one of the things that I work on is finance, and it's not a secret. There is no hidden pots of gold anywhere in the United States. The cost of educating kids is continuing to go up. Our costs are going up just like our fuel costs are going up and rent going up. And our budgets are staying about consistent as they were 20 years ago. And so a lot of school districts have elected to get rid of programs like music and art and PE, performing arts, fine arts, as a way to save budgets, as well as counselors and librarians. And I can tell you that's because we haven't done a great job showcasing and making people understand how important it is in education. My doctorate is in education literacy, and we know because our children are born in a digital era that their brains and the dendrites in their brains don't make the connectivities to some of the things like color, sound, and the other senses because they've become over-reliant upon the television and music and everything being auto-synthesized for them. And so we know that schools that support art and music are able to help kids develop faster literally. And so one of the things we want to do is, one, make sure that we are incorporating it into all of our classes and making sure that it's a point in our instruction. But the other piece that I think is essential is that we need to look for other revenue streams. I've been successful in multiple school districts bringing art, music, and physical education back by finding grants. And I use literacy grants because of my research in literacy to show that it is essential that you have art, music, and PE to help students develop the neurons in the brain and the dendrites so that they can help develop cognitively in our schools. So I think that's the first plan, and we have to do it across all levels, not just high school. We tend to get rid of those programs right away in elementary schools, and then we rely on the classroom teachers to do it, which I believe have been doing a phenomenal job. But we wouldn't ask a person that is a mechanic of diesel trucks to work on our electric cars. And so we shouldn't overburden our current teachers right now and ask them to move from their content area expertise and become experts in the areas of art and music, which is essential in academic development and in cognitive abilities.
All right. Have you successfully passed a bond?
Everywhere that I have been has been at bond capacity when I've been the superintendent, but I have worked as an assistant principal as well as a principal in schools that have passed bonds. In Sunnyside School District, we were successful in passing bonds, and as ironically as this may sound, is to make sure that we could continue music and art programs in the school, as well as to bring in technology and make sure that we're keeping our librarians and our counselors. That bond passed successfully, and I worked on the committee for the bond so that we can go out and network and do that. Unfortunately, I worked in a very large school district that hasn't passed any bonds in over 30 years, so we didn't have any success there. And then the last two districts that I'm currently working in, we are at bonding capacity. So we certainly need the money to enhance our schools, but our taxpayers right now, the property taxes are already at capacity, so we're not allowed to ask for bonds. So we've been looking for things. I'm currently writing a couple grants right now to bring in some additional monies. We just wrote a grant for $3.8 million to building modernization, because obviously the building was a military installation. The military pulled out, and there's nobody to fix all the fixtures and the retrofitting, because we are attempting to move into an LED setting and become more of a green campus.
Okay. What do you consider the best way to support your teachers?
You know, the best way to support teachers is, one, to be available and visible. You can't be observant of what's going on in a school and get a true essence if you're sitting in your office all day. I will tell you, my students in my schools make fun of me. I'm sitting next to one. I'll try to hold it up so you can see it. But this is my office in schools. It's a rolling desk. My office is in all of my campuses, because I have one on all my campuses, because I have 6 campuses where I'm currently at. It just has a conference table and chairs, because I don't want to live in my office. I don't believe in microwaves and coffee makers and televisions and all that stuff. Those are just reasons or excuses to stay in your office. I also believe that you need to put the teachers in front of you. And I would take it a step further, all educators. All of us are educators. All of us have a very dynamic and specific role and a technical role in our schools. And I like to say that if you force feed people, they vomit all over you. So the best way is to bring them in and listen to their ideas. They have more institutional memory than anybody interviewing here today. And we really need to listen to them and bring them to the table, and not bring them to the table in April or May or June, but to make it part of the fabric of what we do. One of the things that I do is that I do have a superintendent's advisory council for teachers and staff. I have one for students. We meet once a month, and they're allowed to bring any issues to the table so that we can solve them then and not wait until they compound or snowball and get out of control.
Okay. What systems do you currently have in place to keep labor management relationships solid and communication open?
Well, when I came into both organizations, unfortunately, they sat apart from each other until April, May, and then everybody got in the room and they were rushing to negotiate. And I don't believe in that system. I also don't believe in that system in developing budgets or anything. I like to start that process in August, and we dedicate time, which I call a continuous school improvement, to all aspects of professional development. So once a month, we put things down that we need to talk about that become the fabric of the organization. So the other part of that is I like to have a bi-weekly meeting with the union membership so that they can bring issues to me that are concerns of theirs. The funny thing is, when we have time, we're able to accomplish a lot of things and people are a lot less frustrated. And I will tell you, they've been my best advocates when I have concerns or issues. I float them to my union leadership, and they've always been able to help me come up with resolutions way before they get out of control or out of hand. And they're also a good voice. We're all on the same team here, and what I try to work on is getting rid of that Darth Vader versus Luke Skywalker mentality, that I really want what's best for teachers. Look, it's not an accident. You know, educators are underpaid. They haven't been respected nationally. And so my job is to help them to be respected and to be valued and to get paid what they're worth. And, you know, why sit around and fight about those things when we all can agree upon that? Let's figure out how we can find solutions.
How have you supported in the past and continued to support in the future student opportunities to earn college credit while in high school, such as dual enrollment and AP?
Can you repeat the question again?
Sure. How have you supported in the past and continued to support in the future student opportunities to earn college credit while in high school, such as dual enrollment and AP?
So all of my programs, when I came to this school, because we're such a small high school, when I came to this district, they didn't have AP. And so we figured out ways to partner with Lassen Community College to do dual enrollment. And we have some students that are doing that remotely, as well as we provide busing to students to get up to the community college for those that would rather take the classes in person. We also offer AP advanced placement courses. I have one teacher that does it in person in mathematics, and then we offer multiple opportunities through Odyssey-ware, which is online. But I will tell you what my philosophy is I believe that all students should have access to that kind of curriculum. If it's that good, why are we limiting the amount of kids that are getting into those programs? And so I have always been a fan of those programs like International Baccalaureate, dual enrollment classes, gifted and talented classes, honors classes, and AP classes. We need to find more ways to get those programs out to students and then provide quality tier 1 instruction so that the students that don't traditionally take those classes are successful. We know that in schools that have done that, and I did that in 2 local high schools that were in turnaround, we got our enrollment up of students in AP and International Baccalaureate classes. And across the board, our test scores began to increase district-wide. And I'll tell you another thing we found out almost immediately is that we didn't have a high percentage of students with various ethnic and demographic backgrounds that were taking those classes. So we went out and we made it more, we recruited and we convinced parents that their students would be successful in these programs. And we provided the appropriate professional development for our teachers so that students can be successful. So I'm really pleased in my experience of increasing these programs in the areas that I work. And I believe that we need to get more students into those programs, especially those students that demographically haven't traditionally enrolled in those classes or felt the need or that they weren't having the success in those programs.
How have you dealt with an underperforming administrator?
Well, first of all, it goes back to you need to be visible. You need to be observing those administrators. You need to be looking at various data points. I like to triangulate data. My job is to be a teacher of administrators and to coach and mentor administrators, which I currently do right now, and work with them. I believe people, they give you the best they know how. So most of the time, I would say the vast majority of the time when people aren't being successful, it's because they don't know how. So it's our duty to teach them. It's one of those things that I like to say that, you know, we do a pretty good job in education, sending out teachers and other professionals to get professional development and to do cooperative learning or collaborative learning like in a PLC. But then we fail when we get to administrators, and administrators, including superintendents, need to continuously build their own capacity to get better at what they do. This is one of the main reasons that I work at the university, so that I'm constantly keeping up with the new research, the new science, collaborating with other individuals. And so I would encourage professional learning community with my instructional leaders down at the school. And then obviously you take them through the plan, and if things don't begin to get better, you put them on a plan for improvement. And if that doesn't work, then you start the process for progressive discipline. But typically, I have found in my career, the last 14 years, when somebody is struggling, whether it be a teacher or an administrator, it's because we need to help build their capacity. And if you're doing those things and they're just not with the program, they usually figure out right away and they decide that they're not a good fit for the organization anymore. And typically you don't have to go down the progressive discipline route, but that's how you would follow through.
What would be your comprehensive plan to deal with a culture of racism?
Well, everywhere that I've worked, there has been some form of discrimination or differentiated practices for different subgroups or socioeconomic groups or ethnic groups or religious groups. So one of the things that I do is make sure that we develop practices in a climate and culture that is inviting to everybody. And we also need to take the time to try to understand and be empathetic to the various different cultural beliefs, social beliefs, traditions, and customs of various groups. And believe it or not, a lot of people think that that is just an ethnic issue, but even in different communities, there's things that are common practices that often aren't understood. And you really need to get out and meet people and build relationships. Once you do that, then you need to take the data that exists in the organization and aggregate the data. And when you're disaggregating the data, you need to look if there's various groups of people. For example, I worked in a school district that 75% of the Fs in the district were representative of the Hispanic male population at the school. So 75% of all the failures in the school was the Hispanic males. Once I shared that with the teachers and professional learning communities, then we sat down and we decided that we wanted to look at maybe the possible reasons why this was occurring. And then once we identified some of those issues, then we put together strategies to help work on those things so that we could decrease the failure rate, but more importantly, increase achievement of those students. And a lot of it was just practices. It was something simple as when various groups were not getting to class, some of our staff were intimidated to ask them to get to class because they didn't want to be confrontational. And so the students figured it out real quick that if they didn't want to go to certain people's classes, they didn't need to, and they weren't going to be asked to get to class. So we found some real neat strategies to help work with various groups of people and help get them into class. But the most important thing is not to believe that we know everything about everybody, but we need to learn as much as we can about people's customs, cultures, traditions, and their norms, and we need to invite them and embrace them in our organization.
All right, we've got 5.5 minutes left, and we're going to call this one the lightning round. See how many questions we can get in the last 5 minutes. Silverfall School District has 8 small rural schools. What is your vision for improving academics at all schools?
So what has worked for me in the last 14 years in all the schools that I've worked with is, number one, we need to focus on the highly leveraged standards, and those are not the standards that focus on teaching to the test. They're the standards that are essential for students to be successful beyond the classroom doors, in the school itself. For example, what literacy standards are going to help in science, social studies, and math, what problem-solving strategies are going to help out in the other classrooms, as well as what students are going to be successful and what do they need to be successful beyond the school. And once you figure out the highly leveraged standards, is to give teachers time and training in how to deliver quality tier 1 instruction. Our teachers are great. They're the experts on campus, but we need to give them time so they can be successful in those areas.
Great. Would you consider cutting administration if we have more administrators than the average district?
Absolutely. You always have to look at cause and effect. We always have to look at budgets, and we have to look at it very transparently. You can't answer that question on a video, but certainly looking at various data points, looking at the population of the schools, looking at the job duties and the performances of those job duties, all those play into the decision-making process. And obviously you would want to have multiple people in the room when you make that decision, including your bargaining units, as well as students, parents, other stakeholders. But yeah, absolutely. Everybody has to be considered when we have shortcomings of money and funding available.
Do you have a social media presence professionally or as an individual?
Well, over the years, I have decreased my social media because there's a lot of offensive stuff, and people love to shower superintendents and mayors and councilmen with things, and it's very difficult to try to keep up with it and make sure that that stuff doesn't end up on your social media. So about 2 years ago, I deleted my Facebook account. I still have a Twitter account. I don't monitor it too well. I most likely spend the majority of time on LinkedIn. And again, because there's just a lot of advertisement and things on there that I don't want the public or people to see and make misjudgments about.
How would you incorporate social emotional learning in the schools?
So my background is working with students with social and emotional, and I'm a huge fan of multi-tiered systems of support, positive behavior interventions, and I do those together because PBIS by itself does not address the ACEs, which are the adverse childhood experiences that our students are bringing to the table. And those things are not often made known to us. So I work with my teachers on how to develop relationships. And again, those are things that we should be doing through collaboration. Those are things that we should be doing on our campuses and working with our communities and getting out in the public.
Silver Falls is a great school district, and this hasn't happened by accident, but by years of intentional work of educators to hold kids and staff to high expectations. How important to you is the history of where we have come from and how we got here versus new ideas in decision making? And how important is it to you to rely on and consult with current administrators and staff?
So absolutely, I've seen this. Silverfall School District is a top performing school, not only in Oregon, but nationally. 91% graduation rate. These things don't happen by accident. I'm sure you've done your homework on me, but I'm a systems thinker, and I believe the results you're getting are exactly what the system was designed to give you. And so when you're having success, it's very important not to come in and shake and rattle things up. It's also important to keep your doors open, because there's a ton of institutional memory that cannot be replaced, and get those individuals in as consultants to help make sure that we're enhancing and supporting those things that are working extremely well. But just like in every organization, we need to be thinking forward, and we need to have people available to collaborate to look at what things or what challenges lie ahead, and we need to try to get ahead of those things. But we cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I think that's what a lot of administrators do. One of the things I'm always committed to do is to be big eyes and big ears the first year that I'm hired, so that I can learn as much as I can about the organization, and I can surround me with the people that have that institutional memory that are going to help in the decision-making process.
All right, 40 seconds left. What are your thoughts about the student investment account?
So I'm not familiar with, I didn't hear what you said, Student
investment account, otherwise known as the SIA, is a part of the Student Success Act that was recently passed in Oregon.
So the thing that is important that I really like about it is that it makes us dedicate resources, time, and money to those things that matter based on the data that we gather and collect, so that students are benefiting. I also like the fact that it isn't one of those things where we're just going to go out and make these mass purchases or hire a bunch of staff, and then we're not focusing on the goals and putting the money where things need to be. Again, as far as being successful and keeping those programs going that have made Silverfall School District one of the best programs in the country.
And that's our time. Thank you so much, Mr. Bond, for being with us this evening. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm back. When we got booted off, I unfortunately lost the questions that you had submitted to the Q&A. So unfortunately, I do need you to resubmit those if you'd like me to ask them. I'll do my best to remember. I didn't write them down because I wasn't anticipating being bumped off. So please resubmit questions to the Q&A if you'd be so kind. And Drew, if you are listening, you are a panelist, and I'm going to make our finalist a panelist, or the host, so that we can see his video. But if you could please reclaim host as soon as we're done, and remove the panelist. I'll do the best I can, Sarah. So that we don't get bumped off. That would be wonderful. Thank you. All right, and our next candidate is ready. So here we go. Hello, Scott. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you just fine.
Hi, welcome. All right. So this is Scott Drew, everyone, from the Beaverton School District. Scott, go ahead and take a couple minutes to introduce yourself and share what you'd like to the audience.
Sure. So thank you for having me tonight. It's great to spend some time with you. And I've been an educator for 22 years. I've been in leadership for 14 of those. I'm recently in the Beaverton School District. And I think one of the things that's most important to me in terms of serving the public is building community, building strong community at all levels, and really around the idea that we are a school district as opposed to a district of schools, and that there's a way of systems thinking that I believe that really adds to a child's experience when they come to us. And a lot of my experience and expertise has been in building systems that help each and every child regardless of their background. And I'm happy to be here. You guys have a very, very special district and just fascinating and lots of good things going on. And number one, you have a strong community. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Have you successfully passed a bond?
I have not, but I've been a part of passing a bond. We've been in two in Beaverton. A few years back, we passed the largest bond in the history of the state, and we're still building facilities with that bond. So I've been around while those bonds are being passed, but I've never passed one myself.
Thank you. What do you consider the best way to support your teachers?
Well, number one, I think the best way to support teachers is with clear expectations. I think number one, being clear is actually being kind. Teachers need to know exactly where they stand. And I just believe in no surprises. So if teachers have clarity around their work, they feel heard, they feel supported. And it's my job to allocate the support that they need to do their jobs. Then they can do their best work. I really think that that's around being heard, being felt like you understand and you feel understood, and having clarity about your work.
How would you implement bringing back elementary music education to all our schools?
Well, I think I'm not in the minority at all of people who think that music is a huge part of education. I think I have a lot of ideas around that, but what I'd really like to know is a little bit more about how the community feels about that. I know it's very important, but I'd really like to hear from those people who have been in Silverfall schools for a while, and I'd like to know from teachers as well about how that might look. So I think there's a lot that goes into that, and I don't think that that's something I can give an answer to right now, except to say that I am the first to say how important music is in a child's education. And not just in the elementary and middle, but well into the high school. And there's a systematic way of doing that so that when our children enter high school, they have the prerequisites to be successful there.
What does music look like at your school?
So we take a lot of pride in our music program. We have 2 music teachers, and our students receive 2 music classes per week, and that's all 1,000 of them. They receive two music classes and 2 PE classes per week. And then on a 5th day, we do a different type of rotation into a different type of special. But in the music program, one teacher teaches more instrumental and the other teacher teaches more vocal. And halfway through the year, they switch classes so that each student gets to experience both. We take a lot of pride in our music performances. We always have 100% attendance. And they're just really, really fun. And so we take a lot of pride in that program.
What systems do you currently have in place to keep labor management relationships solid and communication open?
So first of all, we meet once a month for our climate control meeting. I have 4 union reps in my school. We're 1,000 students, we're 80 staff. So big school, and 10 grade levels. So there's always a lot going on, but we meet once a month for our climate control meeting. But that's really just a dipstick for the month. What we do in terms of our climate control team, the four union representatives, myself and our assistant principal, is we say, if there's something urgent, you need to come and tell us immediately, because it does have a shelf life. So we want to solve things as quickly as possible. And we never want our meetings to be about the contract. The contract is our contract. It's our collective bargaining agreement. We all adhere to that. What we want is to think way deeper than just the low-hanging fruit of sticking to contract. That's just a given. We truly believe in that. What we want to know is, how do we better and strengthen our school culture, the way we do things around here? How do we strengthen the way people feel about that with our climate? How do we deepen our understanding of initiatives that we're implementing to get other points of view? And so really it's an ongoing dialogue between us and our teachers. And I think bottom line, our approach is that, at least my approach is that we're colleagues. And I'm a teacher also. I just happen to be in the role of the instructional leader. And so really it's that ongoing dialogue that builds trust. And we've really enjoyed a long-standing relationship with our union here.
How will your urban experience translate to our rural district?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, one of the things that I like most about your district is that you have quite an array of different environments where students are learning and can learn. So I think in my experience here, we have, I have worked with many different types of populations. I think in your case, one of the things that would be new to me is the smaller school concept, but I do get the K-8 concept as well. So I think there are a lot of parallels there. I would just need to get in. I'd like to be in those schools and see them in action and talk to staff and talk to students and sort of understand what the way of doing things around there is.
In regards to equity, how do you get all education partners, teachers, admin, support staff, community, on board with thinking outside the box on serving our most at-risk students?
Yeah, and that's certainly been a specialty of mine over the past 22 years. And I think number one, we have to understand is that the only way to serve children is through adult actions. And adult actions can only do two things. They can either add to a child's educational experience or detract from it. And if we say that it's every child's civil right to be educated at a high level, then that means some kids are going to require more. And that doesn't mean there are winners and losers. It just means that some kids don't have an equal opportunity to start at the same place. And I think that it's incumbent upon us to understand that it's not a child's fault that they're born into poverty or they're born into challenges. It's up to us as adults to make sure that that child has the same opportunity to prove that he or she can be all they can be.
How have you dealt with an underperforming administrator?
So I've mentored many administrators in this district, some of whom were underperforming. I only have one administrator that reports to me, and I've never been in a situation where I've had an administrator that reported to me that I've had any performance concerns.
All right, what about a direct report that was underperforming?
Yeah, and that happens too. And I've certainly had my fair share of that. I have one right now. And the way that we handle that, again, is starting with really clear expectations and giving that person time to improve and making sure that there's been many, many conversations before we ever get to a place where things have to be written down specifically. We just really feel it's important to be clear. I feel it's really important, so does my staff, that a teacher should never be caught off guard because of performance concerns. Those types of conversations should be happening from the very earliest point. What we need to realize is if there are performance issues, that's opportunity to help. And it's not an opportunity to show a person the door. It's an opportunity to say, just like some kids need more, well, so do some staff. And sometimes change is hard, and staff just need to respond to the right support sometimes.
Silver Falls is a great school district, and this hasn't happened by accident, but by years of intentional work of educators to hold kids and staff to high expectations. How important to you is the history of what we have done, where we have come from and how we got here versus new ideas in decision making?
Yeah.
And how important is it to you to rely on and consult with current administrators and staff?
It's extremely important that I rely on current administrators, staff, community. I want to know the story from your point of view. I have plenty of ideas, trust me. They're always swimming around in my head. I would have no trouble coming up with those, but those are my ideas. And what I want to understand is, what are your ideas? What are your hopes and dreams? The reason why things are being done, there's a really good reason for that. And I want to get down to the bottom of why that is. And I can't do that by coming in and flinging around ideas. That would just be, well, pretty arrogant. What I would like to do is come in and learn from the community, learn from the staff, learn from the school leaders, and try to build a narrative together that each staff member and each stakeholder and community member can share a part of in their own way. And that's how I think ownership is built in organizations, that we come up with a narrative together, but we do that by listening first, especially as leaders.
How have you supported opportunities for students to earn college credit through AP and dual enrollment courses, and how will you continue to support those in the future?
Well, I can tell you this because I'm a principal of a K-8 school, that it matters to us a lot how many of our children go into AP classes. And so our job is to make sure that they're prepared. And we have all manner of ways to do that. We have a two-way immersion program here. We have a middle school. And we also serve a high population of bilingual students as well. And one of the main things that we focus on with our 8th graders is that they go to high school prepared, and they go to high school being exited from English language learner services. That is really important, so that they have the same opportunities to take college prep courses and have universal access to that as they would their monolingual peers. So our role in the elementary and middle school is to get them ready for high school. And in the past 10 years, we've sent off all students who have been exited from ESL services. We're really proud of that.
Do you make student-centered decisions versus adult-centered decisions?
Yeah, what we call that here is we base our decisions off of facts, not feelings. We remove the feelings, and we're in a business that is inherently filled with adult feelings. We all have our own philosophies and thoughts about how things should be done. But what I've always said is, if we follow the data, if we take into account multiple pieces of data to form the reality, then we can remove the emotion from the decisions and make a decision that's more transparent and clear for everyone. It also makes for a very clear narrative, so that we're building for the future off of really compelling reasons.
What are the most important things that you would bring to Silverfall School District, and what is your vision for the Silverfall School District?
So again, my vision for the Silverfall School District would be built over time. I think that it would be impossible for me to understand what the vision would be for the district without having started working there and talking to people and building relationships. But what I can bring is systems thinking and systems leadership. It's something I've been really proud of. My entire career has been dedicated to building systems that remove the excuses of saying that a child's extenuating circumstances will be a predictor of their future success. I've had a lot of success in serving students of all backgrounds and really zeroing in on those students that should not be falling through the cracks. And so I really believe in a school district. I don't believe in a district of schools. I believe that there should be alignment, but I also think there should be some autonomy as well. But I think if we are a school district, then it's incumbent upon us to build a system where a child can go to any school and receive top-notch instruction, and that instruction shouldn't vary too much from teacher to teacher. Everybody puts their own personality to teaching. It's a very personal profession. But in order to do that, we need to have a system so that we can speak the same language in terms of the targets and standards that we're assessing. And I think that that's what I can bring, a systems point of view.
What are your thoughts about the student investment account? Do you feel it has been damaged by Kobit?
I do. I think it's been damaged a lot. And I think we're looking at very, very tough economic times. And I don't think it's time that we shy away from that. I think we need to accept the fact that we'll hope for the best, but we have to be ready for the worst. And it will absolutely be affected. The most sobering statistic I've heard in the past couple of days is that only 1 in 3 Oregonians were able to make rent this past month. That's a really staggering statistic. And when we start thinking about corporate tax dollars, income tax, those are huge pots of money that we get our revenue from, not just from the school improvement account, but also in the general fund. I think there are going to be some really tough decisions down the road. I think the key to all of it is to make decisions so that in the future we can build back also, and make smart decisions that might change the way we think about things in the future.
Give us an example of something you might consider to be a failure from your past and what you learned from it.
You know, one of the things that I've learned is that when you start thinking about services for kids, many times what we want to do is go to the kids who are the most intensive needs first and try to deal with them, and then hoping that they get on track somehow. But what I've come to believe and come to find through a lot of hard work and a lot of mistakes and a lot of difficult conversations is we have to start in reverse. And that's something I've really learned at this school. We've experienced incredible amounts of success, but one of the things that I always go back to is we should have started sooner, thinking about the big picture first, and then starting to address individual children's needs. So in other words, starting with a really, really solid core program and guaranteeing to our public that we're going to teach an entire year's worth of standards in 1 year and have a plan for that and get really solid on that, and so that we understand how we need to differentiate for students who aren't responding to that. Otherwise, what we found is that we're just spinning our wheels. And when I look back on that, we wasted a number of years not thinking about it in that way. But I think that's, you know, that's part of experience, is what happens when you don't get what you expect.
How would you support social emotional learning in the schools?
So I think social emotional learning needs to be addressed with the whole group first. So all school, all district first. All students need social emotional strategies. They're not innate. All students need to understand their zones of regulation, how to regulate themselves, self-calming strategies. Every child needs that. But then again, we're going to need children who need something more. And we need to ensure that in our system, in our community, that every child that crosses through our school doors has an opportunity to express themselves through any one of a number of things. We use community circles here so that children have a voice every single day, or at least the opportunity to talk, but that all children get this instruction on how to understand their emotions, how to regulate their emotions, how to make good decisions. And then for the students who need more, they need additional interventions after that. So that might look like a calming corner in a classroom in the elementary, or it might look like a trusted adult in the secondary. And then we might have students, just like we have readers who are a couple years below grade level, we might have students who need even more help than that. And I think that's important to come up with a plan for those kids as well. We certainly wouldn't exclude a child from being 2 years below grade level from a reading group. and we can't exclude these children just because they need more intensive support with their social emotional learning.
Which is more important, graduation rates or support and acquisition of skills?
Well, I think if you focus on the acquisition of skills and students' critical thinking, everything else will fall into place. I truly believe that. If we focus on the growth of where a child came to us and how did that child leave us and what we did in between, then everything else will fall into place. I know that Silverfall School District has a high graduation rate. I know that. I know it very clearly. It's known across the land. I'd also be interested to know who the 10% are that are not graduating. I'd want to put faces with those names. I'd want to have those names and those faces on my wall. I'd like to know what the plan is for each one of those kiddos and what I can do to help. Because if a school district like Silver Falls is already having 90% of its kids graduate, we could definitely get to 100, I'm sure of it, or darn near close. I think we just need to start individualizing what does that look like and what do those plans look like for what those children need. But again, going back to building a solid core program where we understand what is being asked of us from the state. And we've had teacher teams planning for those lessons and planning for students' different individual needs by differentiating, then that will always translate into greater student performance. And in this case, even higher graduation rates.
Without experience managing more than one administrator and high school teachers, how will you approach being the superintendent of Silverfall School District?
You know, I was told that same thing when I first started as a K-8 principal, that I had never supervised a middle school either. And when I took it over, we had one of the lowest performing schools in the state of Oregon. And now we have one of the highest performing middle schools in the state with 90% of our kids coming from poverty. So, and how did we do that? Well, we do it by building trust with each other. And I'm certainly not a fan of assuming that I know the work of others. But there's a lot of things in a school district I haven't done in addition to being a high school teacher or supervising a high school. And I think the most important part is that I'm a learner first and foremost. I am a teacher at heart, but I am a learner. And I do believe that teachers understand their work better than anyone. I do believe the teacher is the most important factor in a child graduating and a child achieving, but I would take it one step further. I actually think that's force multiplied when we start talking about the teacher team or the department. And so understanding how as a system we can get support for those teacher teams and those departments would be my job as a leader.
What would be your comprehensive plan to deal with a culture of racism?
That's a really, really good question. I think the first thing that I would want to know is the history behind that. And I'd like to know what's been tried in the past. But I think what really matters in the long run is that we first understand that those of us from the majority have had privilege our whole lives. And that we need to understand that the system of schools in this country has been built off of middle-class norms and the norms that we grew up with and that we know how to manipulate. And so I think having a starting place and trying to go about it from a place of empathy and building empathy and understanding that not everybody in this world starts at the same place. And sometimes it does have to do with how we were born and understanding that this is real, that racism exists, and to a large extent, microaggressions and systems that have been put in place that are racist, that are barriers to kids succeeding, need to be talked about in a way that's safe, and so that people can feel safe about expressing their ideas, even if they don't feel comfortable with the subject matter. That's really, really important that we understand that everybody's starting in a different place. I'll also say that engaging in discussions about race and how we treat each other and how we view the world, those discussions are non-negotiable. We have to have those, and it's incumbent upon us as public servants to make sure that we are taking a look at our systems to break down barriers to kids and understanding the privileges that we have as well.
All right, we've got 5 minutes left, and typically that is our lightning round. So we're going to see how many questions we can get through in the next 5 minutes. Do you have a social media presence, either professionally or personally?
Professionally, yes.
Okay. And I think you touched on this already, but what made you go for this position as superintendent in Silverfall School District? What do you know about the district, the community? Do you know people who live here, work here?
Yeah, so I've always known Silverton as a very, very strong community. What I'm really fascinated by is the network of K-8s and also all the things that Silverton High School is known for. The size of the district really interests me. And I'll tell you something else. I read the strategic plan before the position was even posted. And one of the things that struck me was the push to get outside of complacency. That even though you have a lot of things that you're proud of, that you're still energetic and enthusiastic about pushing forward and trying to get better. And that really rang home to me.
With our district's high graduation rates and commitment to further college-going opportunities, what role do you see early college and dual credit playing in that?
Well, I'd like to learn more about that. I think that if there's an opportunity for us to get kids dual credit, if there's a way for us to accelerate and get kids early college experiences, I think that that's awesome. I think that we should be a system based on acceleration, not just because of a child's age would dictate what grade level they necessarily have to be if they're on an accelerated path. But I also believe that that should be open to all kids if it will serve them best.
What was the last book you read?
I just finished Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. Absolutely fascinating. Highly recommend.
Thank you. Tell us something fun about you.
So I'm a twin, and I have twin boys, and my father has absolutely no sympathy for me, and so that's kind of fun. I think that's kind of fun.
I agree. All right, we'll go with our last question. What does empowering leadership look like for you? How will you apply it to the staff and community of Silver Falls?
Yeah, so I believe first and foremost in leadership that we have to show with our own actions that we care, and that we care about the careers of others that we lead, that we care about them as human beings, that we're empathetic, that decisions affect people in different ways. But the thing that I'm most proud of in my career is all the leaders that have come out of the schools that I've worked in and that are school leaders today. And I still keep in touch with them, and they're still my really good friends. So we now have 9 in the Beaverton School District.
All right, well, Mr. Drew, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We really appreciate it. And I'm going to go ahead and close out your window so we don't have any technical difficulties. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so let me put up my, oh, that's our time. Put up my feedback slide here for you guys so you don't have to try and remember my email address. Our next and last finalist of the evening, Mr. Traney, will be on in 5 minutes. So I'm going to pause here for the next 5 minutes, give you guys an opportunity to send me your feedback from our time with Mr. Drew, and I will be back with our last finalist of the evening. Hello, Randy. Welcome.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm okay.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being here with us this evening. I'm going to jump right in. Please take the next few minutes to introduce yourself to the audience and share with them anything you'd like to share.
Okay. I'm Randy Traney. I'm currently the superintendent of Kobit School District. I've been here for 16 years. I also worked in Newburgh School District as a teacher and McMinnville as a teacher for 1 year, and for 8 years in Alaska, which if you add all that up, it adds up to 30 years. So this is 30 years in education. I have 2 kids. My youngest is graduating this year, which is my primary reason for looking around at jobs. And Silverfall was one of only 2 places I applied to in Oregon. And because it had some qualities that I really was attracted to, namely, it has a high graduation rate and it looks like a district that really values student achievement, which is what I've kind of made my mark with here at Kobit. It's very weird talking to just you, Sarah. I know there's other people there.
Yes, this is definitely a unique way to conduct this input session, or sorry, not input session, but meet and greet.
Okay.
So thank you for your patience with us. So I'm going to jump right in, start asking you some questions.
Okay, thanks.
How would you implement bringing back elementary music education to all our schools?
Music is a very dear subject in my life. At Kobit, every student gets music from grades K through 8, and then 9 through 12, it's optional. And we are one of the lowest funded school districts in the state of Oregon. So that's really just a matter of prioritizing where you put your money. I dedicate a bigger percentage of our dollars to general ed instruction than any other school district in Multnomah County. I don't know about the rest of the state, but it's probably very similar, which means that I afford to buy teachers and I don't buy many other things like administrators. And that's one of the ways that we have managed to retain music here in Kobit when we are one of the lowest funded school districts in the entire state. So I'd have to look at the budget and see what the particulars are, but in general, it would be an approach to putting more resources into instruction and less resources elsewhere.
Have you successfully passed a bond?
I have not successfully passed a bond. Kobit is a challenging environment to pass bonds. They have managed to pass 1 bond in the last 50-something years, so 1 in my lifetime. Currently, the demographic of Kobit is elderly, so the huge majority of the people who live in Kobit do not have students in the school district. Despite that, I've been working on passing a bond because we have 1 facility that's in serious need of it doesn't need repaired, it needs removed. And from the initial ask, we had 33% of the voters say yes. To the last time, we were at 47.5% of the voters. So although I haven't been successful, I'm dogged, and I can definitely move the needle. Like moving at 14.5, 15 points, that's a pretty good swing.
What systems do you currently have in place to keep labor management relationships solid and communication open?
In my tenure at Kobit, 16 years, we've had 1 grievance in the entire time period. So I have a track record of good labor management relationships. And one of the ways that that happens is when labor sees that management recognizes their value. One of the things that I say often, if I'm speaking about teachers and teachers' aides, is that they are actually by far and away the most critical part of education. It does not really matter what ideas the administration has. They have to be implemented by the educators, the people who are actually sitting in front of the students. And when labor, so the teachers and the teachers' aides, see you prioritizing your resources to them and recognizing their importance, their most critical importance in the whole endeavor, you've already taken a huge step toward creating good labor management relationships. It's, that saying, maybe they don't care what you know until they know that you care. They know that I care about them here. And then after that, then it's just communication. It's just talking. Like right now, we are looking at the same problem that everyone else is looking at with loss of revenue. And we're the lowest funded around. And in some places that would be made even worse by poor labor management relationships. But right now, I am brainstorming with the labor union to try to decide how we're going to get out of this. So it becomes a synergistic team building approach to managing the district.
So
Try to keep these short, because normally, like most superintendents, we just rattle on.
I'll keep you in time, I promise.
Okay.
So somewhat related, what are your thoughts about the student investment account, and do you feel it's been damaged by COVID?
I don't know how it can't be damaged by COVID. It's such, we all are feeling this right now in the state. It's like we were all looking forward to that first time in my career in 22 years in Oregon that we were actually going to add things for the first time to the district, to each district's budget. And that just does not look like it's a reality at all. My opinion, and no one knows what's going to happen, I believe that they are probably going to significantly decrease the SIA to shore up the state school fund. It doesn't really make sense that we would have one fund that's dedicated to adding extra stuff if meanwhile you're taking away the base stuff. So they're probably going to take money, if there is money in the SIA, and shift it towards state school fund. So we can at least keep, a platform close, or at least I want to say approximating current service levels.
In regards to equity, how do you get all education partners, teachers, admin, support staff, community on board with thinking outside the box on serving our most at-risk students?
Could you repeat it one more time, Sarah?
Sure. Yeah, that was a long one. Yeah. How do you get all education partners, teachers, admin, support staff, community on board with thinking outside the box on serving our most at-risk students?
There's no magic pill for this one. It takes lots and lots and lots of communication. The board members heard me say that one of my mantras that I carry around with me is those of us with the most have to want for all kids what we want for our own kids. I grew up in poverty. I did not go to school until second grade. My parents were married at age 15 and divorced at age 20. I was the kid. I was the kid in one of those demographics we're talking about. And if it hadn't been for teachers, admin, support staff, and community members, Randy Traney would not be talking to you all tonight. They all got behind people like me and others with similar stories to mine, and they changed our lives. And one of the ways that I have managed to do that here is I tell stories similar to the one that I just did. I try to speak to people's better angels, that when we are living a life where we have more than others, it's our job and our duty to try to help others come up. And that message resonates with all of those groups. I've never seen it not resonate with those groups. People in education, people who care about education, they have a natural bent to trying to bring everyone up. And I feel my soapbox is getting out. Another thing that happens here is when you start reaching those populations that have been marginalized, all boats rise and fall on the same tide. So while you're dragging those people up or giving them ladders to climb up, you are also helping the top end. And pretty soon you have this synergy where everybody across the board is benefiting by you reaching those populations that have traditionally been marginalized.
How have you dealt with an underperforming administrator?
I'm going to have to pause on that one. I guess the closest situation that I have had to this was when I took over as superintendent. The previous superintendent became the charter school director. And that our initial creation of a charter school literally saved Kobit School District. And the person I'm talking about, they had done a remarkable job here for many years. But something happened, years and years, decades of great performance suddenly changed dramatically to where we were supposed to be in an equitable relationship, because we literally had charter students and non-charter students in the same classroom with the same teacher. Suddenly, like, the charter students all had brand new iPads and the other students didn't. And the charter staff were getting a raise and the other staff was taking a cut in pay. And it was all supposed to be, according to the charter agreement, an equitable relationship, like all for one and one for all, or that all boats rise on the same rise and fall on the same tide idea. And it fell apart utterly. And I was left with the task of removing that charter from our district. And it was a horrendous task. And I had to do it by just sticking to some basic moral judgments about what was good and right and fair for all students. And that's what helped me get through, literally removing a person that I had known for 20 years.
How many administrators does Kobit have?
We have not as many as most, because remember, I don't spend a lot of money on them. We have one superintendent. Currently our high school is 8th through 12th grade. So there's 2 administrators there. There's 1 administrator in a K-8 school called CAPS. There's 1 administrator in our grade school. And we have a student service director, so 6. I also have a lead teacher in my middle school, where I'm officially the principal as well. Most of my administrators, we also teach. I have taught 1 class or another, sometimes as many as 3 classes, although I only did that for 1 year. Because we try to put our resources into instruction and not into administration.
How many teachers do you have, and what do you consider the best way to support them?
How many teachers? We have 62 teachers. And here's like the best way to support teachers. and we don't always get to this point. The best way to support teachers is to first, I call it feed them. You give them the resources they need. Like, I've been in districts where they count the photocopies. That feels like the wrong thing to be trying to save money on. You have these professionals in the building and they don't need to be counting their photocopies. If your budget is so tight that you are down to counting the number of copies that a person can make, you need to look at something else. So I call it feed them. You give them the resources they need. Teachers really don't ask for that much. Stuff is cheap. People are expensive. Then you try to give them autonomy, give them agency in what they're doing. So here we've made these professional learning communities around our multi-age instruction, where the teachers are actually creating the curriculum. If you go through Kobit School through grades 8, The only textbooks you will find are math textbooks. Everything else has been teacher created. So now they feel like they have the resources that they need. They feel agency and investment in what they're doing because they've built it. And then you make sure that you treat them fairly. Like if there's not enough money to go around, which I've lived in this place for 16 years, you're upfront with them about that. And you let them know that you're giving them every bit of compensation that you possibly can. Did I answer all of that one?
Yes. How many students do you have in your district?
Right now I have about 1,242 students in the district.
And that counts your charter school students?
We don't, it's complicated. Sorry. The charter school went away about 6 years ago. We no longer needed the charter school. And plus I described that it was a problem at the time because open enrollment came online. And so we could get out of district students without a charter school. Open enrollment has now disappeared. So we are now going to be a charter school. Technically we are a charter school right now, but we won't let in any students under our new charter until next year. Sorry, so yes, we're at 1,242 now. We've been as high as 1,350. When I started, we were a little over 600. And we have grown because we had to, because of economies of scale and being one of the lowest funded districts in the state.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Silver Falls is a great school district, and this hasn't happened by accident, but by many years of intentional work of educators to hold kids and staff to high expectations. How important to you is this history of where we have come from and how we got here versus new ideas and decision making? And how important is it to you to rely on and consult with current administrators and staff?
There's a lot there, but I think I got most of it. First of all, that track record that you described is the exact reason that I applied to Silver Falls. That's the total reason I applied to Silver Falls. It looks like a place that values the things that I value. It is a great school. It's a great school district, and that's why I'm interested in it. I don't know all of the intricacies on how you've got to where you are. I'm positive they exist because without them, your scores and your graduation rate would look way different than it does right now. You said high expectations in there. And that is one of the mantras that I carry around with me. I call them absurd aspirations, and we have to set absurd aspirations. All of the people there know what you have done to get where you are. And that makes me believe that you also value these absurd aspirations or high expectations for students. So I feel like I would have an opportunity to join a team of people that already thinks the way I think. I don't feel like I have time to convince people to care about kids and set high expectations, which is why I'm not applying to many places, but this place has that intact. So I desperately want to team with those people who have helped you get there, and then just keep pushing it, because that's the one thing I found out here. The more we ask of kids, the better they all do. You know, when we started AP for All, it sounded just crazy that we were going to do it, and now the average student, I just read this in something that the Washington Post published. The average kid in Kobit is in the 99.998 percentile of all students in the country because we all had this shared vision and expectations. And it wasn't just Randy Traney who got them there. It took all of us. And I want to go somewhere where other people think like that, and we can take a bigger population than Kobit and move them along.
How would you support social emotional learning in the schools?
That is a huge one. That like, if I were to say one thing in my career in 30 years that has changed most dramatically, it's the need for more social emotional learning for students. Our population has changed. We have more students with acute childhood experiences. We have more students who arrive at our door with childhood traumas. And this doesn't just feel like it's a Kobit thing, or even a west of the mountains Oregon thing, or an Oregon thing. It feels like this is a nationwide thing, because I hear this problem everywhere I go when I talk to other administrators from other places. So you have to recognize that your population has changed and you need to shift resources to that population. That was one of the things we were most looking forward to with our SIA dollars. We were going to dramatically increase our number of mental health counselors on campus. We have also implemented a training for all staff, like a pretty rigorous training about trauma-informed care. So we're trying to reallocate resources to the needs of the students. That's something that I talk about. It's you meet the kids where they are, both academically and social emotionally.
All right, we've got 4 minutes.
Okay.
So
Whoa,
this
that
would
was
be
fast.
the lightning round. Silverfall School District has 8 small rural schools. What is your vision for improving academics at all schools?
I've worked in a small rural school, 100 students, grades K-12. So I've walked in those shoes before. And my vision for the small rural school or the larger school, they're all the same. It's setting absurd expectations or absurd aspirations for all students. And when you do that, all boats rise and fall on the same tide. I know it's a broken record, but I really do believe those things. And I think you do that best, especially in a small rural school, by trying to get excellent educators and group them with students for as long as possible so they can form long-lasting relationships, both with the students and the teacher, the students in that cohort, and the teacher and the parents. If you can get teacher and parents at the same time working together, you know, for the better of their kid, like, you have won the game. It's 2-on-1 and you're gonna win. You're gonna get great achievement from students.
All right, you mentioned AP for all. As a follow-up, how do you feel dual credit, IB, and early college fit into your vision for moving forward the district's goals?
Those are all great options. IB took more money to get invested in at the beginning. You had to send a teacher to lots and lots and lots of training. And then if that teacher left the district, you just lost a considerable resource out of the district. Whereas AP training is more like, it's more like you go into the smorgasbord and you get to pick your meal. So you don't invest as much in each teacher. And if they leave, you haven't lost as much. And credit-wise, they're the same. Early college and dual credit are both options that we use here at Kobit. In the perfect world, it's not either or, it's and. So our very best courses here, you take it for AP credit and you take it for manhood dual enrollment credit. You can't just wave a magic wand to make that happen. You have to work at it.
All right, 2 minutes, and let's see if we can get 2 questions in.
Okay.
Do you make student-centered decisions versus adult-centered decisions?
Those of us with the most have to want for all kids what we want for our own. I think I am very student-centered, sometimes to the detriment of the adults. This idea that I've talked about, you know, moving all of our resources towards instruction, towards the classroom and away from the other things, it puts a real burden on those of us who are not full-time instructional agents of the district. So I guess I just have to say my track record is that I am student-centered and I put lots and lots of effort into that. At the same time, like I said earlier, the people here that are doing the work are the most important, and I try to make sure that they all know that I respect them, they have my undying respect, and I try to make them feel like they're valued.
All right, last question. Do you have a social media presence, either professionally or personally?
We have a social media presence for the district, which is largely Randy Traney. Like, we don't have a you know, we don't have a person behind the scenes that we're paying to do our social media. So it's just like one of my other jobs, but that says Kobit School District. I have my own Facebook page and my own Instagram page. And, you know, if you go on there, you're going to find pictures of my kids who I'm very proud of and I love more than anything, and my family. So you won't find any political commentary. You know, you may find some funny pictures. That's about it.
All right, well, that's our time. Randy, thank you so much for being with us this evening. I'm
Okay.
going to go ahead and I'll take care of taking you off. So no need to close anything out. I'll go ahead and take care of that.
Stay
Have a great
healthy, everyone. Good night.
All right, everybody. So that was our last finalist. Again, I'm going to show my slide that tells you how to provide feedback to me and the board, rather. And I'm going to leave this up for about 5 minutes, but that is our virtual meet and greet. So thank you so much for logging in and bearing with us during some technical difficulties and for spending your time with us this evening. Take care, everyone.